It is time for us to begin a new chapter in the XNA Xtreme class. It is time for us to look at object-oriented programming. Now, you may think to yourself, but haven't we been looking at object-oriented programming? Well, the answer is yes. And we said that all the way back in the very beginning of Volume 1 of the XNA Xtreme class, that in C#, everything is an object. You simply can't escape it. You try to create a simple console app and you're staring right at a class. It's already there. You're coding inside of it. And everything that you try to create externally, classes, 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 you can't escape it. And then you turn around and you see the keyword new, and now we're instantiating a class into an object and we're using that object. Yes, we have seen these things. We've even gone as far in the first volume as to present a very simple, streamlined overview of what classes were, what fields were, methods were, and properties were, just so that you would have a bit of an understanding so that you can get up to speed with Canon 2 and Canon 3, if you recall doing those videos. But we haven't yet had an official object-oriented programming video section, and that is what we're going to do here. So you're going to find several of these videos are going to feel like review, but inside each video there will be more detail than you have been presented with up until now, and it's obviously quite important that we have an object-oriented programming section. So we will begin this out with, what is object-oriented programming? Why do we need it? Why is it important? What's wrong with the old procedural or structured programming style that was around for so many years in the past? Why migrate over to a new style of programming, a new technique? From there, we're going to move into Introduction to Classes. We've seen the basic class template in the past, and we've seen access modifiers such as public or private. Actually, to be honest with you, Logan, I don't think they've ever seen private being utilized with class before. But they're going to see such things as internal and protected, and we're going to show them nested classes. So there's some interesting things that we're going to take a look at inside the classes video. From there, we're going to move into our 3 basic class members that you are going to most commonly find inside of classes. Now, there are several other members that you will find in classes, and we will slowly approach these as we advance into further object-oriented programming sections. But we're going to take a look at fields, methods, and properties with a bit of detail this time around. From there, it is time for us to apply our skills to something. What we're going to do is we're going to create a very simple console application called Bouncing X. You really have to love our creative naming. So, of course, we'll append the end of that so that it makes sense. Simple Objects 1. We're going to make a console application that is going to have the character X bounce around your screen. That in itself is going to be a bit of fun because we're talking about doing it on a console. So, bring up a command prompt and have the character X bounce around. How are you going to do that? But this is going to be a very simple, very clean look at objects. And that's why it's very important to both Logan and I, because we're able to weed out all the Windows stuff if we were to try to create a WinForms application. We're able to weed out all of the XNA framework if we were going to do an XNA framework application. Instead, we're going to be able to focus on only code, and that's going to make things quite nice. And I'm going to go a bit further. I'm going to trace out both the stack and the heap as we work our way through this application so that you know what's happening in memory as well. From there, we're going to turn around and take a look at lists. We're going to show you how you can create a list of objects, per se. What do I mean by that? Well, let's think back to the game Cannon. Remember, we only had one target falling down towards us. That was just one, right? And we only had one projectile that we would fire when we would fire a projectile. What if we wanted to have multiple targets coming down towards us and we wanted to be able to rapid fire a bunch of torpedoes at it? Well, utilizing lists allow us to make a collection of objects, like, say, a collection of enemies or targets. And then we can walk through that list of objects and handle each one individually. Object, check to see if you've collided with somebody. Object, check to see if you've collided with somebody. Object, check to see. And that way we can now have a dynamically changing list where we are adding objects to it as they're spawned and removing objects out of it as they're destroyed. Quite handy. So once we've taken a look at lists and seen how we can apply them to, the overall picture of working with multiple objects, then we're going to revisit Bouncing X with Simple Objects 2. We're going to go in there and we're going to enhance it just a bit. So instead of having one X character bounce around our console, we can have as many as we like. We can just spawn away like crazy, and each one will more or less have their own little self-contained brain and can run around and just do their own thing. And that's really cool for us, the programmer, because we design the brain, and then at runtime in the loop, we simply tell the brain to do its thinking, update basically, and we don't worry about it. It just does its thing. And at that point, the whole, world of object-oriented programming starts to really become focused for us. We can really start to see some of the benefits we can gain from using object-oriented programming. And then, of course, we have to have a knowledge review because, well, this section just wouldn't be complete if we didn't. We need to test your skills and make sure that everything we presented in this section of videos and all of the prior sections from the beginning of Volume 1 all the way up to now, well, we want to make sure that they're still fresh in your head. So, of course, with each new section passing, our challenges for the knowledge reviews are going to slowly get more and more tricky. So, we'll of course have a knowledge review to make sure that you have an understanding of the things presented here. So that is what this section is all about. We need to get it out of the way because when we get into object-oriented programming too, that's when we finally start to get into the cool things where we get into inheritance and what else are we going to be covering in that inheritance? We're going to get into some polymorphism and all sorts of neat things. But that's for section 2. For now, let us get started with object-oriented programming 1.